Hi, guys. Leanne and Mason here. Time for our podcast, Different Perspectives. Welcome to Different Perspectives with Leanne and Mason Holitza. Here we discuss our differing viewpoints through the lens of energy work. Today we will be discussing relationships and making relationship choices using love, not fear. Myself, Leanne, has a background in working business before I found my true path and transitioned to energy work. I'm currently the owner of the Healing Studio at Broomfield, Colorado, where I work as a healer and a teacher. You can find more about me at insightfulinspirations.com. Mason, my son, has had a unique opportunity to be raised in a subtle energy awareness household where more than meets the eye is not only validated, but encouraged to explore. He's currently a student journalist at CSU. You can find his current work at the Rocky Mountain Collegiate. All right, so I'm talking about relationships and making choices out of love, not fear.
All right.
So I think that this is a topic that will be good for us to kind of get into as far as, energy work really does require a discernment of how your own energy impacts a situation, and in particular, how we make choices or how choices are made with us. So if we're making a choice out of fear, often we are continuing to perpetuate a problem that will create more fear. Whereas if we make a decision out of love, we perpetuate more love and make space for more love. I guess I'm just wondering how that translates for you. Like, how do you describe it?
I would describe relationships as something. I feel like I don't really think a lot about what the actions that I'm taking in a relationship.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
But I kind of make decisions based on what I'm thinking at the time, and I don't take this whole long thing in my head to decide. It's pretty simple for me usually when I'm making a decision. It's like one way or another. I usually know.
But how do you, so now you're speaking like a true young man, and you're like, I'm not really thinking much about relationships. But I beg to differ. There are times when I have heard you describe situations where you ask follow-up questions of yourself or someone else in order to make a decision that is good for everybody.
Do you have an example?
Well, I do, but they're kind of personal examples, so I don't know if I want to give it. If you want to give an example, I can go with it, but I want to reveal your stuff.
Well, I think there's a lot of cases where I take the path of least resistance, and I think that translates to relationships too.
Well, and that's not always great.
Yeah, and that's why I would highlight it, because I think that that's my path of thought, is I go, okay, what's going to cause me the least amount of strife? Or there's this other side of me that's very inflammatory and enjoys to make situations where people are uncomfortable in a way that makes them reveal their true selves, if that makes any sense. It might not be the best thing to try, but I think I impulsively get into those situations.
So is that a loving decision or a fearful decision?
I would say it's neither.
Well, I feel like it's got to be one or the other. I mean, it's some version of fear or some version of love.
I think it's some version of love. It's like trying to divine whether or not someone has the same boundaries as me, maybe.
Okay, so you're pushing people's boundaries to see where they go?
Yeah, and I think I like if someone responds well to it, I'm very pleased with that. Like if I push someone's boundaries and I question their morals and they respond with a well thought out argument, then I know that I can actually share with that person.
Okay. Whether it agrees with you or not.
Yeah. If someone is actually pretty genuine with me and they're not just going to try and make me happy, I think that's the goal of my.
Oh, so people pleasing, you don't like it when people please?
No, and I think I do it too.
That you people please too?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, tell me more.
I mean, I'll clean for people coming over, like really meticulously, and it's not even like out of, I want to make my place look so nice. It's like I want them to think I'm a clean person.
When you're not?
Yeah.
So that sounds like a fearful choice.
Yes, I would say so.
So what could you make that same choice out of love?
I think so.
Just I want to invite somebody into my space and have everybody feel good about it.
Yeah, and I think there are times when it's both.
Yeah. So you told me a story, which I'm not going to give all the details to, but you told me a story of your relationship with your girlfriend, about a situation that she kind of brought up a choice or a decision, and that you asked the question, are you doing this out of fear or love or like desire? Like, do you want to do this, or are you doing this because you're afraid not to? And I thought that was a really thoughtful thing that you did.
Well, I like to know that someone's decision is their own, and that I would feel that like that's a version of people pleasing if they're making a decision for me out of fear.
For sure, for sure. But how did you know to ask that question?
Because I felt with something like, well, I think that there are a lot of cases where you can ask that question.
That you do ask that question, or you could?
I will.
Well, how do you know to do that, I guess, is my answer or my question. Because I mean, I feel like it's very, I mean, I feel like it's actually really great if we could all learn to ask each other things like that, especially if we see our friends or lovers
I
people
think
pleasing.
I think that almost comes from a place of overthinking things, like having every scenario prepared in my head for how something's going to go.
Well, that's not good. But
And
I didn't take the question, are you doing this for me? Or are you doing this because you want to mean that you were overthinking it?
no, I wouldn't say that I'm overthinking everything in general. I would say that I've just thought through their line of thought. I've tried to see things from their perspective and gone, well, they might make this decision because they're worried.
Okay.
And I
And so
think,
then you ask, is this true?
yes. And I think that when I get that instinct that that this is something big that they might be doing out of fear, then I would ask.
And I guess I just wonder, how do you know to do that?
I don't know. I told you a lot of it is instinct. Like just this, maybe it's ingrained in me.
Yeah, or taught to you by somebody who
Yeah.
has very strong sense of how energy works.
And I've also listened to a lot of stories of like justified people being justified upset and people being unjustified in their being upset.
Yeah. Well, reactivity, that I mean, that's a thing that, and we all get in our own little heads about certain things, right? And the stories we tell ourselves about what's going on may not even be true sometimes. We make assumptions, things like that. So I think what you're talking about with, you don't see somebody's feelings being justified sometimes, but they totally feel
Yeah.
justified.
But I think that there's this place where you can be making a decision based on emotion and not thinking it through, and it can be very reactive and tumultuous.
Yeah, but don't you think relationship choices are best made out of from the heart space?
Yeah, but I would say that they need to be well thought out too. And if it comes from just a place of anger or place of sadness or a place of happiness, even, I don't think it's a good thing. If it's exclusively from that, because there will be a point when you step back and you see it as the reality that it is, and it might be worse.
Well, there's a thing called heart sync with, heart mind sync, where you're syncing up your mind and your heart at the same time, and they can work together, but the heart gets to lead. Do you think you know how to do that?
No,
No?
I think I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead.
So not being present.
Yeah, I would say that I do have to struggle with that.
I would say you have a struggle with that too.
And I would say that there's a lot of lessons that specifically with my girlfriend that unfortunately we learned from my roommate.
Oh, please give me some examples or stories.
Just the way that they respond to each other is very toxic.
The way who responds to who?
My roommate responds to his girlfriend.
to his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So watching their dynamics is teaching you some things.
Yeah. Because I can look at that and go, well, she's making that decision out of fear and out of anger.
Well,
And,
anger and fear typically go together.
yeah, and I can see that there's no logic behind it sometimes, and there's no reason behind her being as upset as she gets.
So she gets unreasonably upset, in your opinion.
Yes, like way out of, like, very far from what I would consider to be reasonable.
Well, and why do you suppose your roommate puts up with it?
Beats me. I have no idea.
So he doesn't tell you, oh, she's amazing, or
No.
she's so smart, or
No.
do you think that he's making that decision out of fear of not having a girlfriend?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that we've come to that determination.
Okay. So you can see the dynamics of fear in this relationship being toxic.
And unfortunately, it helps me.
Well, yeah, might be your soul contract with your roommate and this girlfriend is to learn some things from them. So what about you and your girlfriend? If there were people watching from the outside in, would they say that things are good between you two and your dynamics?
They do. Yeah. And I think it is because of communication exclusively. That's it.
So because you ask more questions, or what do you mean by
We
communication?
care. We don't, I mean, my roommate's girlfriend will get upset and she'll go hide in the room for 2 hours and won't talk to my roommate. And I'll be like, no, we can't do that. That's not helpful. If you need space, you have to say, I need space, and ask for it and inform, and not just retreat.
So you require this of your girlfriend.
Yeah, it's kind of a mutual contract thing.
Would she have thought of that herself, or would you have thought of that yourself?
I did think of it myself.
Okay, so you decided that you wanted to make these, and then she agreed to these conditions.
Yes.
So you're finding out that asking questions and being very open and with communication is very helpful in relationships.
Yes. And I'm very expressive, and I think that making someone else, like, kind of not forcing them to, but just like being like, this is what my expectations are if you want me to fulfill yours.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the energetics of that. How does it feel to be around, for example, the energy of your roommates and his girlfriend?
My roommate has a completely different energy when he's not with his girlfriend.
Tell me more.
That's why I kind of like to push people's boundaries, because Bryson has very tight boundaries. I probably shouldn't say his name, but he has very tight boundaries in general. He's very open with me when he's not with her.
And how does that feel energetically?
Like a cage. That's the best way I would describe it. Like he gets trapped in a cage.
So it feels like a cage when the girlfriend's around.
Yeah, like emotionally and just in general.
And I mean, from your perspective, and you've known this guy for a little while.
Long time.
Do you think that this is a pattern of his, or
No.
So he just somehow got stuck in a situation?
Yeah.
Interesting. So what does it feel like in your body to be around somebody in that state? Like, do you feel tight when you're around that?
It makes me anxious.
Yeah. Right? So when you're around people who are making decisions out of fear, it causes your energy to be impacted, even if you're not the one making those choices.
Yeah, because when there's something super unreasonable that I would never do in a million years for someone, and they're just like, I expect you to do this, then I just get really frustrated because it's not my place to go, no, you can't do that. It's not my place to tell them how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but I really want to.
Mm-hmm. So All right. So you had some questions you said about this topic. So why don't you throw them out?
Well, I was going to ask you, maybe not specifically about romantic relationships, but about new relationships. Would you say that your career path sends you to meet more friendly new people? Like, do you enjoy meeting new people in your profession more than anywhere else?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think it depends on who it is and what they're going through. And, the first encounter that I have with someone, I try to stay very open and neutral and not just so that I can really get all the information that I need to get from the session. There's people who come in who are more skeptical, or some of them get sent here by some other source and they're like, okay, I'll try this, but this isn't going to work, and those are difficult new people to meet because their energy is very closed. And so for me to try to open their energy and get their energy flowing is more challenging.
Is it a difficult dynamic to have like this expectation that when they come into your room, you have boundaries that are a lot more open for meeting new people than a normal social situation?
Well, for sure. I mean, it's not a social situation. I mean, they're sharing their secrets with me.
I would say that anything could be considered a social situation, like even a one-on-one.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not having chat. We're doing deep work most of the time, and I'm learning deep things about the people and their struggles. I mean, very rarely does somebody come to me and go, I feel amazing, but I just want to be here. Like normally people who come to me are coming with issues. The people who do come to me, no matter what, whether they feel good or bad, we get a lot more really cool information from the guides. Like it's not just problem solving, but it's like we get lots of information about like dynamics of the universe and how things work, and it's really cool. It is a little bit of a sticky thing. It kind of got brought up last week regarding the drumming circle. Socializing or being like out with my clients in a social setting, not in a personal setting, can be a little sticky. I mean, I'm not a therapist, so I don't have the same rules as therapists do, but therapists, they're not allowed to fraternize at all with their clients outside of business. And I can see why that would be important. But some of my clients and students are my friends. And I also have to try and keep a healthy boundary around that.
Does the confidentiality barrier impact your relationship with them? Like, because I can imagine that, like, if I always come home and I'll be like, oh my God, these people are being so ridiculous at work today.
Right. So I sometimes will share with my husband and without sharing names like I will try and keep everybody's secrets and preserved, if that makes sense, especially if they're told to me in a session. I mean, the session's sacred, right? So I don't, it's for the most part, I do kind of have this switch. I don't know how to describe it, but like I can see you like out on the street for the most part and be like, okay, whatever we talked about in the session is in the session. And I'm not like judging you or projecting onto you.
Yeah.
But it's a very weird, situation. And I think this is true for therapists too. I mean, you're in somebody's life for a while they're in crisis or whatever, and then you're gone. Like they aren't, sometimes they don't even tell you if they're better or worse. They just don't come back. And so you just kind of like, they're in and you're way involved in their thick of it with them, and then they're gone. And so that's it's an interesting thing with this profession. And I feel like there's always boundaries getting tested in regards to all that.
Just sounds like a lot to deal with. Yeah.
Well, and I try and make decisions in regards to my clients out of love every time. So if it's loving for me to share in something, I will. But if it's not, I mean, I would not, gossip or maliciousness or anything. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's sticky. It's sticky for sure.
Okay, let me change gears for a second. I have some kind of different questions to ask you. One of them specifically was, do you think that the way that we were discussing with my roommate and his girlfriend, did you experience a similar situation with your dynamic growing up? because you seem to have a lot of the anti-traits to the rest of the family.
Well, I suppose we all kind of learn what to do and what not to do with regards to our home lives, right? I mean, I'm sure there's things that you are not going to do because of what Dad and I do. um, and that's a good thing. I think, evolving is a good thing. So yeah, I mean, I definitely learned a lot from the parents I had, for good or for bad. And I kind of can almost see like how the dynamics of the parents I picked helps me be who I am. So, but I think also it just takes practice within yourself, like to not go unconscious completely and to just let things go into, I mean, and it's like, I mean, I don't think, like right now, I think that there's some things I could tweak in regards to relationships. And so I always am doing that. I'm always trying to reflect on where I'm at with relationships, with relationship to you, with relationship to your father, So
I think I do the same thing. And sometimes I might get caught in a headspace where it's not good to think about it that much.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm an overthinker in that respect. I think I spend time, meditating, reflecting, and taking responsibility for why I am where I am, if that makes sense.
And I really think that the biggest difference between people and the way that they handle their relationships is how they treat people close to them versus people who they don't know very well. Because I've seen both ways, where they'll treat people very close to them very well, and people who are still kind to their friends but still out of the circle, and they'll treat them not so good. And I've seen the opposite, where like family members might get the bottom seat, and some random people who are family friends might get priority.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you think about that?
I would say that I'm the first type, where I definitely push away people who aren't very close to me. Like people who don't prove that they'll be around for a long time or frequently. I see myself pushing them away.
So, do you think that's good?
I think it's good for me because it means that I have more intricate relationships rather than just a lot.
I'm scared to ask. What do you think about me? What do I do?
What do you mean? I would say that you have a pretty good balance. You don't really lean one way or the other because you kind of have to interact with a lot of different people on a daily basis, and you have to keep those relationships at some kind of positive way.
True. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I do that naturally. Like, I don't think I'm like forcing myself to, because I do think like sometimes, like if you're not very nice to your close knit people and you're nice to the people around you, it's like a show. It's like, oh, look, everything's great. And look at this is, and it's kind of inauthentic and trying to be something you're not. And, I think that, I think I can genuinely see the light in most people and honor that and approach it versus, I do have, some standoffishness about certain places. Like I was finding myself, we went back to the soccer field yesterday for the first time since COVID, right? And so and there's, the parents there are familiar because Jack's been playing soccer since he was 3 and with a lot of these same kids. And sadly, I'm not like, oh, hey, to all the people on the sidelines, soccer sidelines. It's a place where I find I will be friendly.
That's where I think the difference is, because we had people even growing up in our neighborhood who would just it felt like they had this need to be liked by everyone else in the neighborhood, and they would invite everyone to their parties and spend thousands of dollars on food, and I didn't see a huge point in that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely like the need to be liked can be a problem. And I think again, that can be fear, right? Because I'm afraid you're not going to like me, or I'm afraid you're going to reject me.
Or I see fear of being alone a lot too.
Fear of being alone. Yeah.
I have some friends who definitely struggle with that.
With having a hard time being alone.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you?
No, it depends on how long, because I spent like 2 months alone and I loved it right up until the end. And then after being with people for a really long time and then having to be alone is a lot different. If I can settle in, I do like it a lot.
Okay. But which transition are you talking about where you were around a lot of people and then you had to be alone?
Like if I have all my roommates, we're having a ton of people over, and then everybody just goes away and I'm alone, then it's kind of a rough transition. Like it's kind of rough to go from that busy all the time. You have to consider everybody else that's around you to no consideration.
Well, and wouldn't you say, I mean, I suppose it differs based on people's lifestyles, but wouldn't you say that, you as a younger person would be actually hanging out with people more often that outside of your like family, because it's, something to do?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Well, and think now to fast forwarding to a dynamic with like in adulthood, would you be the type of person who would want to be really close with your neighbors? Would you want to be?
No, I think I would want to stay close with friends. Like I would want to still have friends.
Okay. And what about friends? Like this is actually an interesting question for, being in a relationship. What about, so if your girlfriend has her own friends and you have your own friends and then you have your mutual friends and then something happens to the two of you, and what happens with the mutual friends? Are you the type of person who likes to have a lot of
Well,
like independent friends?
yeah, I think all of my friends are pretty independent. All of her friends are really independent.
Meaning they're your friends, not her friends.
Yeah.
Or couple friends.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have any of those.
Yeah, I mean, when I met your father, he was in a kind of a group of couples, and he was the only single guy.
I think you told this story.
Yeah, and so that was, an interesting kind of dynamic to try to penetrate, I guess.
You were telling the story about how all the girls in the group were super judgmental.
Yeah, they weren't super nice to me, that's for sure. Yeah, we're not friends with them. So yeah, and I wonder too, I mean, I do think our primary relationships dictate what kind of relationships we have outside too. I mean, like for example, if you have a baby and your friends' kids are 20, the baby's going to be very time consuming and take up a lot of energy. And you're probably going to really want to be around people with babies. I mean, you still might be friends with a person that doesn't have a baby, or has, no children at all or whatever, but you might have trouble relating when you're super consumed by the primary relationships.
I do think that's the trade-off of whether you want to have a big social life or whether you want to have kids.
Yeah. I think some people can do it, but I think some people make their children their social life.
Yeah.
Like play groups and soccer games and things like that. PTA, volunteer, boards. Yeah. I didn't do any of that successfully. I tried. I volunteered.
You did all of it.
I tried, but I don't think I ever.
I think between the two of you, you were president of everything you could be president of.
That's funny. I'm really good at being president of the thankless jobs.
The HOA president, and then Dad was the board vice president.
Yeah. I'm currently the president of Garden Center.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
HOA or
yeah, it's an OA. It's an association. Yeah. Yeah. It's quite, because I need more to do, I suppose. All right. What shall we talk about next time? Oh, yeah. This is not the week we're going to be off. It'll be the following week that we're off.
Yeah. Or the week after.
Not next week, but the following week is when we're going out of town. So, what are we talking about next time?
Got any ideas? I can go brainstorm some too.
Well, I mean, what if we talk about just, well, and I suppose we're open for any suggestions from you guys, as I always say, to our listeners who are listening live and to our listeners who are listening later. Comments, questions, that kind of thing is always welcome. I mean, I think it would be interesting to dive into um, more about what it was like for you to experience. Like we've talked about the energy, me teaching you how to ground and things as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk more about using energy tools.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We will see you later. Bye.